I think like Jeffrey Epstein is an interesting, a worthwhile topic to the extent that you can see what money buys in terms of access at universities, and there may be an interesting story in there about like he was clearly trying to blackmail Bill Gates.
Although it is curious that the leak about the blackmail was about a consensual affair with an adult woman.
I mean, that could be a limited hangout.
Right.
I mean, that's possible, but I don't. I mean, it was more of like revelations from a diary that they got.
But why does that go to the Wall Street Journal? Why does that part go?
It's. I mean, maybe to head off other things. I don't know. I mean, I don't. It wasn't.
We don't know. My point is just like just putting that out there.
The we don't know thing is, I think that's a key point, because there are like, this is definitely a very interesting issue. I think TrueAnon, you're going to hear Brace Belden in this clip, does a decent job of covering this. But what we're going to hear is Benny Johnson act like he really has the full measure of the situation,
right? Which is really funny. But but it is fascinating to see a guy like Epstein basically trying to blackmail Bill Gates. Now, what's interesting, regardless of the fact that maybe there's worse stories about this, but there's no reason to believe that there are worse stories, that dynamic still wasn't existing. What it does sort of like also put into stark relief is that Bill Gates does not have his own team of assassins, or at least as far as we know. I mean, that like, because Epstein, if Bill Gates did, Epstein would have died earlier, right? I mean, that's an interesting thing to note, but also to watch that dynamic where this guy is basically blackmailing one of the wealthiest men on earth, leads you to believe that this is probably a modus operandi, and he's doing it with other people. And I'm sure there's a lot to be learned about Jeffrey Epstein that we will never, ever hear about. But what it does is it creates a vacuum for idiots and lunatics to pretend like they are authorities on things that they haven't done even the most basic research.
Right.
And this is the thing to keep in mind. When you hear people who have the ability to take issues that are very complicated, speak with authority, make a couple citations, and all of a sudden it's impossible to refute what they're saying. I think there are some anti-vaxxers like this, frankly. Exactly. And they only run into problems when they basically cite stuff that someone with even like a slight knowledge of geography would know. Here is Benny Johnson. And who is right? Like, what is this?
This is like this guy Mario Naufel, who always hosts these like big roundtables that sometimes include Elon getting on there and stuff like that. Like, and a lot of the right wing sort of people like Benny Johnson are on there. So they're speculating about this Epstein stuff. And Benny Johnson says he has a source in intelligence that is going to give him the skinny of why, for instance, the Virgin Islands were chosen by Epstein.
And curious that Elon didn't weigh in on this Twitter space. He didn't want to join in on the Epstein discussion.
Anyway, it's a clandestine service. Now, as soon as you leave United States territory, the CIA is able to run full ops on you. So if the CIA wanted to spy on Bill Clinton, then they would need to get Bill Clinton off of American soil into an area to be spied upon.
The U.S. Virgin Islands are
clandestine
American
agency
soil.
would be able to then utilize, they would be able to utilize Little St. James as a honeypot. And all of the delicious fruit was just hanging there from the trees. And I say that, of course, metaphorically. So it's these sick bastards, these absolute sick bastards.
But did they take advantage?
One second, Nick. True, you had a bit of a pushback on that. What was it?
Yeah, dude, the U.S. Virgin Islands are part of the U.S. They're the U.S. Virgin Islands, and he did not have an airport on Little St. James. They took a helicopter from the actual airport there. That is, I have no idea who your friend in the intelligence community is, but if they think that the U.S. Virgin Islands are not part of the U.S., then no disrespect, I think they need to spend a couple more months at Quantico. It's pretty clear what actually the real reason he used the Virgin Islands is because he basically bought half the politicians there. I mean, this came out during the last the last round of lawsuits the U.S. Virgin Islands filed the Attorney General of the U.S. Virgin Islands. I hate fucking saying that word so many times. Like 3 days after she filed that lawsuit, it turns out he had funded the career of the prime minister, or I guess I don't know exactly. I think it's the governor of the Virgin Islands that fired her. He had funded school for half the people in there. He'd been giving these massive tax breaks there. I mean, the U.S. Virgin Islands are where rich people go to do whatever they want, and so it makes sense that he's over there.
You have different governing laws for U.S. territories, and the CIA can operate differently inside of the territories of the United States. That is why the U.S. military can operate differently inside of these territories. You're wrong.
Do you think that it's legal for the U.S. government and the CIA to use child sex slaves? That's what I'm saying. It's like, what? It doesn't matter. They don't care about legality. I mean, this is like a totally. This is a total red herring. No, I mean he's there because it's. Can
you pause it for just one sec? That's really it. Because it's amazing how dumb Benny Johnson is, because like the entire premise of his argument is based on CIA malfeasance and illegality and deep state malfeasance and
blackmail operations, like on a global level.
Sure, but like on the left, we're well aware that the CIA doesn't respect like jurisdictions and borders. We are well aware that the CIA has orchestrated coups in other countries, not like respecting their sovereignty. You think that they care about the very specific jurisdictional laws of the U.S. Virgin Islands?
Right, like the theory that Epstein is so Alexandra Acosta, former was Attorney General.
He was. Was he Labor Secretary under Trump? Acosta, the guy who failed to. He was Labor Secretary.
He when he was in Florida, apparently called off the dogs on Epstein, saying he appeared to be some an intelligence asset. And with regards to the Bill Clinton thing, like it's basically public information as far as I know that Epstein had a picture of Bill Clinton in a blue dress that victims of Epstein saw. And what message do you think that sends to this victim? Like, oh yeah, this guy who flies on my plane and I got this picture of him in a blue dress. You think you want to complain about some of the things we're doing around here?
Right, of course. No. I have the president of the United States dressed in drag, essentially.
But so Benny needs to basically collapse that into a way that's like not. That is just like this is about Bill Clinton and not like and who knows specifically about that. Like we haven't heard specifics with the like the Acosta allegations. It's suggestive, but like trying to suggest that it's the CIA trying to do something about Bill Clinton when it's actually a standard a tale of billionaires can buy off these governments.
And what's most relevant is that Benny Johnson is not a trustable narrator. I mean,
he's a plagiarist.
You gotta. I mean, kudos to him for trying to come back. Well, it's U.S. territories. There's an exception for CIA operations on U.S. citizens. I do not think that's the case.
So you can blackmail the president with sex slaves carve out for the CIA.
Forgot about that. Yes.
But the point being is that he clearly does not have an asset within the CIA.
Yeah.
And maybe that goes
or he thinks he does.
Or maybe that goes without saying.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
I send him $2,500 a month and he gives me all of this information about
why the Virgin Islands?
He also has a relationship with a Nigerian prince who's going to make him rich any day now.
That's probably why it's worth it for him to actually borrow that money to pay off the CIA agent. That's awesome.
Yeah. It just also goes to show how shallow, like, the Epstein conspiracies on the right actually end up being. They want to single out specific people, but there's no really, like, structural critique of power or of, like, shadowy forces in government. They want to make it distorted into some, like, deep state conspiracy that's kind of untethered from the reality of what our deep state actually does.
Well, I mean, that is what was always the issue with Alex Jones, is that he takes maybe like real world dilemmas or problems and then says they are a cause of a secret cabal that there is no real political way of fighting them.
Yeah.
And it basically, the only value is that you're in on a secret truth that will justify a certain amount of nihilism and completely depoliticize people. And that's what, I mean, so much of this functions, so much of this conspiracy talk functions to depoliticize people. And I mean, I would be surprised if that's not part of the purpose of some of it. I mean,
maybe that's what his CIA
right, exactly,
informant is interested in.
Back into Langley, somebody's going like, dude, you couldn't look up the U.S. Virgin Islands? Couldn't you just have said like the Bahamas or something like that? Like, why did you say the U.S. Virgin Islands? And the whole story's falling apart. He gets embarrassed on that podcast.
You're making me look so stupid.
Illuminati Kids writes in and says it was a painting Epstein had of Bill Clinton in the blue dress. And
that's what I said, right?
No, you said photo. Well, then I messed up because I thought it was some photo, which would have been worse. But I guess this is a mocking thing.
It's a massive painting of Bill. You can see it. You can Google it. There's a picture of it.
I mixed it up. I thought it was a photo of him, and I totally forgot the Lewinsky angle for it. But there we go.
Oh yeah,
that's the humiliation element.
Yeah,
right.
Gotcha. Or like, yeah, right. Look at what I can commission for one of my famous buddies.
Yeah.